beyond humbled to be given the opportunity to come up and speak, especially when it's in front of a bunch of professional men. If I fall over and start crying in the fetal position, don't worry, that's normal for me here as of late. I suffer from degenerative disc disease, and the last 10 days have been pretty challenging for me. In fact, last night I would have said it was a 99% chance I wasn't going to be here today. So to wake up and feel like I did and to make this trek down, to me in itself is a humongous blessing. I feel really good about that. I usually start out pretty nervous whenever I speak. I've done this seminar for years now. But the reason I'm that is not that I'm not good at public speaking, it's just because I care. I really do, and I hate introductions. Because anytime you meet somebody, the first thing you're doing is you're judging the living daylights out of them, whether you choose to or not. It just almost seems like it's human nature. That guy's, eats too many carbs, or smells kind of funny, or he's kind of fidgety, or we're always judging, and I really don't like that. And I had a really good introduction line over the last several years to kind of loosen things up, and it's completely worthless. I would say, hey, we're in Wisconsin, who's a Packer fan? Everybody raised their hands, said, cool, I'm a Bears fan, and I'm a deer hunter, therefore I'm smarter than everybody sitting before me. And then they get really upset, and then I go, well, that means because after the second week of the season, I don't have to worry about football anymore, and I can go hunting. And last year ruined that on your part and ours, so it's been months and I've got nothing. So hopefully things will change next year, and then I can go back to normal. But I'm really excited to be here. Like I said, I hate introductions. What's the first question when you meet somebody that you ask them, oh, what do you do? And I hate that question, because it seems like the very first thing that we're doing to identify a person is how they basically sell themselves to make a living. And to me, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me how much money you've got or what you do for a living. What matters to me is what you live for. That's so much more important. The pastor of my church, who's one of my best friends, was the CEO of a technological company, had his 5th kid on the way, and quit to start his church. We had 12 people, and kid number 5 on the way. Is he to be judged any different when you ask him, oh, what are you? I'm the CEO of a tech company. Oh, he's really something. I pastor a church of 12. You know what I mean? So that's why I hate introductions. Yes, I'm heavily involved in the hunting and fishing industry. I've been a guide for years. The many letters is a world record line class fishing world record. And I've had a TV show on the Sportsman channel for a couple of years, and I owned a tackle company that manufactured stuff overseas that was in all the big box chains, and now I own Chase Outdoors, which is a retail company that specializes in hunting and fishing stuff. So basically, if it's outside of hunting and fishing, don't ask me anything about it. I'm pretty one-dimensional in that route. But like sports, whether it's football that you're a fan of, if you love hunting and fishing, it's all relevant. We're always looking for that top level. We're always looking, if you're a football fan, you want your team to go to the Super Bowl. If you're a basketball fan, a lot of years of misery as a Bucks fan, finally getting turned around. That's pretty exciting. But for me as a hunter and fisherman, it's really cool, because whether you fish a little bit or you fish a lot, or hunt a little bit or hunt a lot, those two sports can be anything you want them to be. Fishing can be a way of putting food on the table. It can be a way to create friendships with people. It can be a way to stay connected to people in your family, to get away from everybody, not have to talk to anybody. And there's the competitive side of it too. In hunting, not so much. It's pretty much, you can have the camaraderie and a lot of those things, but there isn't a Super Bowl of hunting per se, like there was in fishing. And I was involved in the tournament series, the WMT, and we were quite successful in that, and that really fueled me as far as from a profession standpoint, and so did the fishing guiding as a profession standpoint, but it was hunting that was really my passion. That was my hobby. That's what got me going. It didn't mean that I was good at it. I just really enjoyed doing that, where fishing for me has always been a career talent. I've always made a living in that industry. So when I was a young kid, my dad didn't hunt or fish much. I'm predominantly self-taught. A lot of the community that I grew up in helped cultivate that because I could hop on my bike and ride a mile in any direction and be on water and fish off a shore, and that kept me out of trouble for the most part. It kept me pretty singularly focused on my passion and my hobby at that time. But the hunting thing, once I basically became 16 and could go and drive to public land, I could start cutting my teeth as a deer hunter, and I loved it, and I was terrible at it. I made a ton of mistakes. I still might stink at it a little bit. But I had not had a lot of success by, I guess, the world standards of what successful deer hunting looks like. And working for Gander Mountain, which I had done for 13 years, bouncing around as management in different stores, and like with them, I had become close with a professional fisherman, Hall of Fame guy who had a TV show, and as a kid, he was my idol. So it's super cool through working in that avenue that I get to run into this guy because they sponsored him and he'd do seminars at the store. And the first time I met him and he shook my hand, my eyeballs are this big. I just felt like I'd, met the president. This is the guy who I wanted to be. And he called the store because he needed to organize something for a seminar he was coming to get. And I answered the phone. He said, "Oh, Justin, how's it going?" I'm like, "Hey, good, Joe, good, Joe." He's like, "Oh, how's your deer hunting season?" I said, "Oh, it's great. I got a fork buck." And he was like, "Why'd you shoot that?" And I was completely put off by it, to be truthful with you. I said, "What do you mean, why did I shoot that?" I hunted public land in Rhinelander. It was like the only buck left in the 7-mile radius. Like, I was pretty excited about it. I worked really hard to get that fork buck. I said, to be honest with you, Joe, fishing is public for everybody everywhere you go. Hunting, the best land is private land, and I don't have access to it. He's like, "You ever killed a big buck?" Like, "No." And I was in my early 20s at that time. He's like, "You need to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." "Why don't you come down my place this fall?" Which was in Buffalo County. And if you're not a deer hunter, Buffalo County, which is north of La Crosse, is the #1 producer of Boone and Crockett, that's record book whitetails in the entire country. Strictly because of its quality of hunting, the land value is astronomical, and for people just buying vacant land for the purpose of hunting. There's a ton of other reasons why it's valuable land. It's great farm country, it's visually beautiful. There's some big frac sand mining stuff going on over there, now, but it's just mecca for deer hunting. And I hung up the phone and I thought I'd won the lottery. I'm beside myself. This is a dream. As a kid flipping through the magazines, every big buck, Buffalo County, Buffalo County, Buffalo County. It was a dream come true, and especially to have somebody that I grew up wanting to be have me come out there and hunt his property. And it was awesome. So as a young man, I got to go out there, and sure enough, the first year I shot a great big old buck, and it was amazing. And the following spring, I thought, okay, that was my chance. I got to do it. That was it. That was pretty cool. And he's like, "I need you to come out by the cabin next week." And I'm like, "For what?" He was like, "Well, you want to hunt my land anymore, you better come out and cut some firewood." I'm like, "All right, that's a great trade-off." So went down there and cut firewood and came back, and I really thought I had something figured out when I was down there. Now, where we're at up in Wausau area, it's just basically woods and field, and we're, for the most part, pretty flat. There's not a lot of topography. If you've ever been, which I assume so, in that La Crosse, Buffalo County area, it's just some of the most beautiful country that this earth has to offer. It's stunning. The combination of the fall leaves and the corn drying up and the green fields and all these bluffs it's absolutely awe-inspiring to me. I absolutely love it. If I ever have a Corvette, I will spend all fall driving around Buffalo County. And it's immaculate. But deer activity is significantly different in bluff country than it is by us. And why that is because they have a whole nother third dimension element with the quick change in topography. So basically what was happening is Joe owned a big bluff that stuck out like an arm does, and he had agriculture that wrapped all the way around it, down at the bottom. So it was pretty natural and easy to figure out. In the low light conditions at nighttime, all the deer are down feeding on the fields, and then in the morning, they would ascend up towards the top of the topography. Typically speaking, in the middle of the day, most of those deer are 25% down from the top of the highest point of topography. The reason that is when they're 25% down from the top, they can see everything down below them, and then they don't silhouette looking up. And if you hunt out west a lot, I spend a lot of time in states like Wyoming and Montana, you see the same thing with the mule deer. Mule deer, even though they're out in the wide open, they'll sit next to one rock just down from the very top, and they camouflage themselves very well, and they do a good job protecting themselves in being able to see. And then you've got something called therms, which is basically the rising and the lowering of the air temperatures, changing where your human scent gets distributed to based off of those things. The reason I'm telling you that is the point is we would come in from the very top of the bluff in the morning when it was dark out and descend down the bluff to catch the deer coming off of the fields and heading back up. So we were getting them in this little pinch point called the spring hole. The problem was it was phenomenal hunting from the beginning of the day to about 9 o'clock. Then by that time, everything had ascended up, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs until dark when they come back down. So if you don't shoot anything, you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, looking up 75% up the way, and just watching big buck after big buck go running across, and you're sitting down there and can't do nothing about it. Well, I thought, I got you guys. I'm going to fix that. So the second year I go back, I take my climbing tree stand, and I drop it off up top, and I descend down to my stand down along the field edge. And about 8:30 hit, and I got out of the stand, and I ascended up to where my climbing tree stand was at. And now, if you don't know what a climbing tree stand is, can you flip that slide to that picture?
Sure, it's the last slide.
It is a two-part stand, a metal platform that straps to your feet, and then the top part is a seat. So I will use the bottom platform to stand up, and then I will hold the seat onto the tree. I will sit on the seat. I'll lift the bottom platform up with my feet, and I will repeat that to get up the tree. Now I always go up 22 feet, and the reason I do is because I have a 20-foot rope from my stand down to my bow. So when I get up and my bow lifts up off the ground, I know I'm 22 feet, and that's where I always sit. So because I dropped this stand off in the dark, I didn't really know where I had it. So I get up there and I find it, and I shimmy up this tree, and I'm only there for like 15 minutes, and it's the breeding season, so if you're not all hunters, I'll try to use terminology. It's Valentine's Day in deer world. Now I feel comfortable with my bow out to a distance, 40 or 50 yards or whatever, and I'm sitting, I no more than get in my tree a couple minutes later, and this pretty little doe goes running by with 3 teenagers just chasing her hotter than you've ever seen in your life. That was their first scent of love I think they'd ever had. And they went blowing by, chasing her through the woods, and she was definitely in heat, which meant she was hot, ready to go. A nice looking lady, and she was interested in some men. And they were probably 75 yards away from me. And I'm sitting there, I'm scratching my chin, I'm like, I can't shoot that far. But I remember reading one of those magazines as a kid that said if you ever had a doe that you believed was in estrus or in heat, ready to breed, go running past you, that scent trail that they leave lasts a very long time. There's a very distinct difference in the scent from a doe that doesn't want to breed to one that does want to breed. And he said if you ever have a doe go by an estrus that's outside of your effective shooting range, get out of the tree and go run over there and stand 15 yards off the edge of the woods, because there might be another buck 15 minutes later, half an hour later, that gets a whiff of that girl and comes running by, and he's so love-struck that he isn't even going to pay any attention that you're standing there. And I'm like, that sounds like a pretty good idea. I felt pretty smart. I wore something called a safety harness. It kind of looks like a lineman harness that I attach around the tree. And I was so impressed with myself that I had thought of this grand plan from start to finish that I was in a real rush to get over to where this doe had gone by, because I was so convinced I'm getting myself a big old buck, and I was excited. I was like 25 years old. I was excited about everything. And And I threw my backpack on my back, and I put my bow on my lap, which I usually will let it down with that string that I pulled it up with. And I unhooked my safety harness, and I sat down on the top part of that seat to drop my platform down. I heard a noise, and before I knew it, I was falling backwards. Now, I'll try to visualize this for you guys. Your feet are strapped into the bottom platform. As you can see, that's the bottom platform. What had happened is the band that went around the tree had snapped, and I'm sitting on said seat. So I immediately go backwards, and I come to a striking halt. I drop my bow, and it happened so fast, I was almost oblivious as to what was going on, and I'm just fighting, trying to bring my focus, my point of view, my center, get back on some kind of mental awareness situation. And I've started to figure out what has happened in a very, very short time. Because my feet were strapped into the bottom part of the stand, I was hanging upside down from that platform. And the back of my calves were resting on the edge of this platform here. And I didn't have a lot of time to think because that top part of the stand, that seat portion, was wrapped around my throat and it was choking me. And I dropped my bow to the ground, and quiver full of arrows and broadheads laying 20 feet below me. And I had to figure some stuff out. Being that I've worked in the sporting goods industry my entire life, I've sat through a number of different products, seminars, and demonstrations, and Hunter Safety System, who builds the harness that I was wearing, had said that there was a statistic that more people died, percentage-wise, from hanging in the tree than they did from actually hitting the ground because of the circulation cutoff. And that they were working on trying to find ways of eliminating that. Like if you'd fall in a standard harness that used to just be a belt strap, basically you'd wreck your organs. Or if you didn't have anything else and it was pulling on the inside of your legs near your groin, it cut the circulation off and you just hang there and die because you couldn't get on a platform or anything. So that really made us, I was very aware of that point at that moment. I had gotten the top part of this metal stand that's choking me to death off, and I drop it to the ground. It looks like that, and it's made out of metal and it's got sharp teeth, and now that's laying down next to my bow. I've got my backpack off, and I was in an adult, I shouldn't say adult, I was in a men's rugby club, big difference. And I was pretty strong at that time. I'm doing everything I can, swinging and screaming as loud as I can, trying to essentially do the physically impossible to get myself back up on that platform. And I became very aware very quickly that that wasn't an option. It wasn't going to happen. And I started reaching in my backpack just to see if I could find anything, and I'm upside down, and I feel the back end of my skinning knife, and I'm like, perfect, I can cut the straps out that my feet are strapped into, and I can get out of here. And as I feel that handle, my backpack shifted, and I lost grip of that knife, and that knife, now out of the sheath, falls down below me, next to my bow and next to my tree stand. So now this backpack's completely useless to me. The pain is completely unbearable, and I get the backpack off, and now it's just me in the bottom part of the stand. Meanwhile, the circulation's getting cutting off on my calves, and the pain is unbearable. I'm screaming for everything I'm worth for help, and I don't know what really good that would do. Guy'd come running up, hey, you're in trouble. I'll be back in an hour when I go get a ladder. Honestly, now it's almost kind of foolish. But, like on Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny at the end when the circle comes in and closes, there's movies where they put in the special effects to make that circle, dark circle, that's real. As perfectly, vividly accurate as you can imagine. And I watch the black circle come in and I watch the light go out. And as it's coming back in, I'm done. Like, it went through my thought process before I blacked out. I'm done. Done. I have no idea how, why, ifs. I love science. I'm a big science geek. But I came to. I have no idea the science behind it or what have you. As a Christian guy, it'd be very easy for me to just stand here and say it was a miracle. But I came back too. And when I did, I realized that I had a second chance and I had a small window to make something happen. So as you see, I'm thinking to myself at this point that if I can swing hard enough, that I may be able to get that bottom part of that stand to start shifting or something. Maybe get it to shake its way down the tree, something. But I was basically giving whatever I had physically into, what option? I mean, there's, especially in that situation, your brain's functioning at 0.1%, which is half of what it normally functions at. And I'm swinging as hard as I can, just trying to make something happen. And all of a sudden that stand, kind of like I had hoped, shifted. I felt it shift real hard. And when I felt it shift, my foot comes flying out of one of my boots. Now I have this gigantic rush, because of all that circulation. I can't explain it any other way than it was a rush. Comes flying through my leg, and the pain just through the roof. And I just let out a wail. But it had given me enough, and actually this is pretty accurate. This foot came out, so now I'm hanging from this foot pretty similarly located where that boot's sitting at, with then I was about 30 pounds lighter then, but still bad. It gave me enough space that I could turn around and I could reach and I could grab the tree with one hand. So now my foot strapped in is body weight, turned around, and all I could remember was being in 8th grade playing sandlot football, and my fat little buddy Andy rolling over my leg as I came up and caught a ball, and he rolled right up over this ankle. And the snap was so loud that the girls watching us on the other side of the field shrieked and called 911 immediately. And it turned out it was just the tendon slapping, and I completely rolled my foot over, and it was pretty much fine except for the $600 ambulance ride my parents had to pay for. But honestly, my goal at this point was I've got that one foot that I need to get out. Under any circumstance, I know I've got to get my foot out of that boot. And I grab onto that tree with that one arm, and I just start kicking as violently and as hard as I can. And I feel the stand shifting like this and shifting and shifting, and all of a sudden I felt it kind of have a little bit bigger jolt, and I felt that other foot pop out of that boot. And with the other arm, I reached to go grab that tree. I'm upside down. I remember looking back over my shoulder, and the only thing I could see was my socks attached to my feet. I was literally folded in half, bear hugging the tree upside down. And then I woke up, and I was at the bottom of the tree. I assume that I slid down, holding the tree, because my chest was pretty torn up. So I don't remember the details, but I must have slowed myself down some. And I came to, and I remember the first thing is I couldn't breathe. My throat was so closed shut from screaming, and just dehydrated from the physical process that I really wish I knew how long this process was. I have no idea. But I instantly got a water bottle out of my backpack and took a drink and kind of could breathe again. And I looked, and I was laying next to everything that was directly below me. So somehow, when I came down, I was not directly on center of where I was hanging, because otherwise I would have landed on that stuff. And I couldn't move my legs. And I'm just kind of looking around, kind of getting my wherewithal, grateful to be alive. And I said, I gotta get out of here. I start crawling with my arms and pulling myself out of the woods. And I get to a stump that I had to pull myself over, and I could feel a tingling in my toes. And I sat there and I tried real hard, and I actually got my feet underneath me, and I got about halfway stood up in time to see the other guy that was hunting this 640 acres looking for me, because he had no idea. I mean, nobody knew where I had saw me and watched me tip back over. And this was 2005. This happened, I think, yeah. And I saw Dave for the first time like 6 months ago since this accident. He walked into my store, looked at each other, and just started crying, both of us. Brick is a big guy, but he picked me up and carried me out of them woods like I weighed 25 pounds. And just like that dad thing kicked in, you know, his son about my age, dude just picked me up and carried me out like I was nothing. Like just, you know, that pure definition of manhood, like coming out. And he carried me out of the woods. And I took this picture, which was not 22 feet up. So the only thing that I can think is the stand probably came down 5-6 feet through the flailing, and that probably helped some. But I was sitting in a ladder stand the next morning hunting white-tailed deer. Really well strapped in. And then when I was done that morning, well, I hate telling this part of the story because it's frustrating for me, but the next morning I was sitting in the ladder stand, and I was sitting there just admiring, you know, creation, probably in a way that I've never looked at it before, but I had a squirrel farting around, and usually I'm really mad when them little rascals are making so much noise. And I'm just watching him going around, and all of a sudden this doe and this fawn come down in bed in front of me. And the squirrel goes behind me, and I'm just sitting here watching this doe and fawn bedded down in the leaves. And I hear that little and all of a sudden I hear I'm like, I turn around and look, and here's a great big 8-pointer 13 yards behind me. And because of the elevation change, he's at eye level with me. And he's just sole intent looking at that doe. He was cruising looking for a date. I'll never forget drawing my bow back, putting my pin behind its shoulder blade and letting that arrow go and watching that arrow fly, and being borderline arrogance of I just made a story for Outdoor Life magazine. You know, I watched that arrow hit, and I followed that blood trail, and I never found that deer. And I hit it as good of a spot as I could ever ask to hit that deer in. And to this day, nobody in camp can explain why that deer survived where my arrow hit. And I don't even know that all this time later I figured that lesson out, because his godson shot it during rifle season chasing a doe like 3 weeks later. I just, like, if that part of the story wasn't meant to be, it was really frustrating. In fact, I knocked my stand down with a stick and grabbed my boots and packed up and went home. So I'm here today, and the story's traumatic for me in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways I celebrate it. I hate excuses. Just as a man, there's nothing, and as an employer, there's nothing I hate worse than excuses for myself and for other people. You know, I'm just not that kind of guy. So I go back and I look at what happened here, and I can call it bad luck, or I can look at it for what it is. It was my fault. I did not use my fall restraint harness the way it should have been used. That's my fault. There's a reason that it happened, and it was because of my action and my decision. Other things, too, that I've learned from it is if my knife would have been on my belt instead of in my backpack, the story would have been different, wouldn't it? I'd have been able to cut myself out, grab this tree, wrap my legs around, slide down, maybe put some ice on my manhood, on my way, you know? If I'd have been somewhere that no one else knew where I was specifically, and I'd have had a whistle with me, he might have come sooner, and maybe there was some sort of situation, maybe he could have climbed up the tree and helped get some weight off me. Could have been a different story. It could have ended up like it happened for my buddy Mitch Hoyt in marathon, and I could be in a wheelchair right now. His story is the exact same as mine. We live 10 miles apart. He's in a wheelchair and I'm not. And one thing that him and I have talked about is that particular outcome really isn't what's important. It's what comes from it outside of that that's truly important. When you're in the career of professional anything, especially when you're like television side of things, when I was in Sportsman Channel, your product that you're selling is yourself. And when you're in your early 20s, most of us are generally pretty self-centered to begin with, especially when you don't have a relationship, you know, with a partner or a spouse. You don't have a relationship with God. You're living so selfishly, and then you put in the aspect of I'm selling myself. I spent my 20s as an extremely arrogant person, and I was almost forced to, because all of my direction from my sponsors and from the station and all that is promote yourself, promote yourself, promote yourself, promote yourself, and I had no time for anybody else. Nobody, including God. And this event here could have been my end, could have been the end of the story, but in a lot of ways it was really the beginning. A near-death experience will really help give you perspective on things. And I looked at that as what could I have done to better equip myself to prevent that from happening. I could either sit there and go, oh, woe is me, or I could look at it and learn from it and say, okay, I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Because doing things the wrong way and ill-equipping yourself to go up into a tree, you can end up dead. And the one thing that I've taken away from this, more so than tree stand safety or anything else, is how incredibly applicable this story is to your life. Completely. To me, that tree is my life. And it all depends on what I'm making that tree out of. What's your tree to you? If you take an inventory, because me being here speaking really has nothing to do with me. You're the guys who took time out of your busy schedules, away from your profession. You didn't just come here for a free meal. You came here because you want to make a decision to see improvement in your life. This whole thing's about you guys. And it speaks to me too. Every time I say this, I'm talking to myself as much as I am anything else. What is your tree in your life? What is the giant thing that you hang on to? What is your number one priority? Because your actions are going to show what that is. We can say whatever we want, but it's our actions that show what that tree is. Is that tree something that's large, strong, healthy, and well-rooted into the ground? And it's always there for 100 years like an oak tree is? Or is it something different? Is it rooted in good grounds, or does it have root at all? Because if that tree doesn't have those good, strong roots, it doesn't matter how good the tree is. The first strong breeze that comes over, the first storm in your life that comes over, it's going to knock that tree over. And it doesn't matter if you've equipped yourself by having that harness tied up or not, because it's just going to drag you down. Is the ground that your tree digging its roots in? Your life, your top priority. Is it good, solid ground that feeds your tree, that makes your life better, healthier, stronger? And if that tree is the best thing that's available to you, the best tree that's available to you, then you know that the answer is a relationship with God. And you can do everything right in a lot of ways as far as equipping yourself with the tools. I had my safety harness on. I had a knife in my pocket. I had all of the tools accessible to me. I worked in the sporting goods industry since I was 15 years old. It ain't like I didn't have access to the stuff that I needed. My wife will tell you I have 5 times as much as I need, and she's right. But you could be equipped, but if you're not applying it, it doesn't matter. And it also doesn't matter how many times you do it right. You do it wrong the one time and it can kill you. I always wear my safety harness, and I always slide it up the tree, climb up, slide it up the tree, climb up, slide it up the tree, climb up. And the one time I don't, it almost killed me. What's your safety harness? What is it? What's that thing in your life that can kill you if you step away from it once? For some guys, it's battling alcoholism. That's a huge thing, especially here in Wisconsin. You could be sober for 40 years, drive past that bar once and go, just that one time. And it can kill you. Figuratively, it can destroy your marriage, it can destroy your relationships, it can destroy your job, everything. You can do it right the whole time. You can go to all the Bible studies, you can go to all the churches, you can do all the studies. If you don't equip yourself and use that equipment steadily and stay steadfast, and it's hard. As much as I use that safety harness, guess what I did? I didn't use it once. It wasn't intentional. It's difficult to go that whole road and to not make a mistake. Some would even say it's impossible. But if I can get one person in here to wear their safety harness all the time, then I've done this right. If I can find one person that's going to remember this and be encouraged to say, I'm not going on that website, I'm not taking that drink or that one thing, and I don't believe that anything is inanimate is good or evil. It's what man does with it that makes it that way. I'm in firearm sales. There are some very, very big different opinions on it. My opinion is it's a piece of machine metal. It's what the heart of man does with it that chooses whether it's good or evil. My brother is a police officer. He does a lot of good with his firearm. And there's a lot of thugs that do bad with theirs. What are you equipping with? Have you taken that evaluation? What is my ground look like that I'm standing on? Is it firm and good and healthy? Am I planting a tree that's something that I can truly hold on to for my entire life and trust that no matter what the storm comes, that tree's not going to rot, it's not going to fall over, it's going to stay there, and I can trust it and I can hold on to it and believe in it and know that it's there. And I can equip myself with the things that can help make sure that I stay attached to that tree. And like the guy that carried me out, equip yourself with men and put them beside you that can help you. You cannot go through life alone. There is nothing good in being alone. I was just listening to a leadership thing the other day. They talk about testing monkeys in stress situations. Put a monkey in a stressful situation and take all of his readings. They put his buddy in there, put him in the same situation, and all those readings come in at half. Literally cut the monkey's stress levels in half just by having his buddy by his side. This is a great opportunity here today with like-minded people who are taking time out of their busy schedule saying, I want to do something better. I want my priorities to be aligned. God, wife, children, and all the other stuff can come after. There's always time for the little things if you put the big things in your life in the forefront. It always goes smoother. It always goes better. And that's my challenge and my encouragement and my beg to you guys. Find that tree, stay connected to it. Just remember, we always make that conversation. Has anyone ever made the statement, oh, this world's going to hell? All you got to do is turn on Facebook, turn on the news, turn on to get that feeling. If we want to make that change, we start with ourselves and we impact the people around us. This Leading with Power is a phenomenal opportunity to actually watch an entire community change. Because if we see Madison's business leaders come together and they start to govern or they start to lead their businesses in a Christ-like manner, how that impacts their employees and how that impacts their family, next thing you know, we can change a community. So I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule during the week when there's so much going on. We are a busier society than ever. Thank you for coming in here and listening to what I have to say. And I used to always say, I really hope that, you know, I'm of value to everybody. One thing I've learned is it really doesn't matter to me. Like, I don't need anybody to come to me. I appreciate it, but to say, yeah, it's made a difference. I believe that God's given me a second chance at life and put something on my heart, and no matter what the consequences are, no matter what anybody thinks of, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. And I encourage you guys to do the same. So I thank you very much.